And he said, "Oh, it's late. Why did we start so late?" And I said, "Johnny, if you'd gotten up earlier, we wouldn't be late." Johnny asked me if I were afraid. And I said, "I'm not afraid, Johnny." And then this man started walking up the road. He came slowly, and Johnny kept teasing me and saying, "He's coming to get you, Barbra."
Wrong.
And I laughed at him and said, "Johnny, stop it."
Wrong.
And then Johnny ran away. And I went up to this man.
Wrong.
And I was going to apologize.
Wrong.
Why don't you just keep calm?
Wrong.
Blood and Black Rum Podcast presents Night of the Living Dead. Hey guys, welcome back to the Blood and Black Rum Podcast. I'm Ryan from the NewsDeadWorld.net. I'm joined by my co-host Martin.
How's it going?
I'm pretty good. We're here in the podcast on somber terms, though. As you probably have heard, the legendary horror director George Romero recently passed away. A little sad, a little upsetting to hear. Thought that guy was never going to die, to be honest with you.
He definitely looked like a man that was gonna, be battle weary and last like 110.
I mean,
like an Abe Vigoda.
I mean, for sure. It was kind of interesting because when I heard about it, I was listening to a podcast, and it was actually a horror podcast that was talking about like the most influential horror films and the ones that were really important. And they were talking about Night of the Living Dead in that podcast. And then Sarah just happened to check her phone and saw that was on Twitter. George Romero, his death was trending on Twitter. And it was kind of interesting because we were watching that, or we were listening to that podcast episode, and it just happened to come up, and it was really strange and fortuitous moment. And crazy too. I guess like his death probably was not totally unexpected, especially since he had lung cancer. And
is that what I didn't even really bother to look to see of what he died of.
Yeah, it was lung cancer, and it probably was coming for a while, and I'm assuming that for a variety of reasons. Most of them, one of them because Arrow Video recently just announced this new Blu-ray release pack. It's like After Night but Before Dawn, and they're gonna release like some of the films that he shot within there, like Season of the Witch and things like that. And so that was like a very I don't really believe that was just a coincidence. I think that they probably knew that soon was going to be, when he passed away. So I think it was kind of like we got to get it out there.
No, I think that's more coincidence.
You do?
I think that's kind of shitty. Like, hey George, we got this bundle we want to release of your films, but we think. I talked to our marketing director, and they told us peak marketing times to get these movies out is when you're gonna die, because as everyone knows, when people die,
no, I don't think
their stuff gets revisited because people are like, oh yeah, that was great, and then like the stuff that was heralded as being great is turned into masterpieces, and then the stuff that was like it's okay, it's like now like wow, what a forgotten gem that is.
No, I don't think
which I'm sure that might happen. Now, more people probably, wow, the Crazies, that's a lot better than the first time I saw that,
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that I think that that was like an intentional thing where they were like, oh, he's knocking on death's door, okay, we got to release this. But, at the same time, I think that they definitely knew it was coming at some point, and so they wanted to, I'm not even saying that they wanted to release it now at that point, but they wanted to. And I don't know the specs on that release, but I'm assuming they probably have like some conversations with George Romero on there. So I'm thinking that they wanted to get those out before he died. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It makes sense that they would want to like actually have interviews with him and stuff on there before he passed away. But it still was kind of a shock and definitely ripple effect through the horror community. I mean, everybody was talking about it that next day, and a couple days, and, you know, here it is a couple days later, we're still talking about it, still seeing, you know, think pieces and articles about George Romero's work. And we wanted to do a little retrospective because
I'd probably say he's probably one of the most top 5 influential horror directors of all time.
Yeah, in your opinion, like for you, as for what you've seen, or in general, like influential to like other directors too. Is it
both? I mean, for me, because when I think about for me, when you think of the great horror directors, it'd be Carpenter. It'd be number 1 for me.
Mm-hmm.
Wes Craven, Romero, Cronenberg, and then probably the 5th one I'd have to kind of mull over.
You're not sure yet.
I'd have to think but those are the 4 that would come to mind, my mind instantaneously. I know for you it'd be more you might throw Dario Argento in there, though I know Giallo's technically not horror, but as we talked about before on the show. But I mean, it is
sure. I would
does have elements.
No, I mean, I would definitely consider that as part of the whole genre and say, yeah, I mean, Dario Argento certainly had quite an influence. Yeah, I really don't know my top 5 directors, but I would say Romero's up there as well. And we'll talk about it a little bit as we get further into the show. But
mull it over as the podcast.
Mull it over and see what I think.
It's just a random thing I just thought of though right now. It's just if I had to think of. And I don't think people would consider Cronenberg really a horror director, but at the same time, I think a lot of.
I mean, he did do quite a few horror films though.
No, I know, I agree, and I think just the way his films, were shot, and the way he the atmosphere that he was able to capture in his films, or.
I mean, I would say, this is off topic a little bit, but I would say that if you're saying David Cronenberg was not a horror director, then you're wrong. I'm not saying that you're saying that, but I'm saying if somebody says that, they're wrong. I mean, there's a lot of, Videodrome, The Fly, Dead Ringers, Rabid. You can go through his whole repertoire, and I would say that even if it wasn't particularly a horror film, even in terms of the plotting, it's still
the atmosphere.
The atmosphere, the whole body element to it. I would say it still puts it in that realm. Yeah. Even and I don't really like people who say well, this is a thriller. It's not a horror. It's what? I mean, now you're getting nitpicky. It's why does it? Why if it's a thriller? Why would you say?
We just did House on Haunted Hill, and that's a horror film. And a thriller.
It's
and a noir.
Noir and almost a crime caper in some parts. And I don't think that you can get away with saying well, that one, wouldn't really put that in the horror sphere because it's more of a thriller. It's I don't get it. That's going overboard with generalizing things. But we did that Wes Craven retrospective, and that was really fun. So we thought, we wanted to pay homage to George Romero and kind of talk about some of his films before we really get into the one film that we're covering today. It was a poll result, basically. I put it up on Twitter and Facebook to see what everybody wanted us to cover for this episode of the podcast. What film should we focus on? Because if you remember back when we, way back, some of our first episodes when we did the Wes Craven retrospective, we actually did, we talked about Wes Craven and his films, but then we went into New Nightmare. We did that one specifically. So it's always good to kind of do a film specifically and in remembrance of the director. And so we didn't choose, you guys chose, listeners and Twitter users chose Night of the Living Dead in the poll, and it was actually really close too. This when we first started out, we didn't have a huge amount of votes. It was actually Dawn of the Dead was leading for quite a while.
But that's that's how voting works. You have some people who are the early risers, and then
they come in late in the game, and they're the whales. They change everything.
Well, yeah, they're what Republicans, they say oh, Democrats get out early to vote because they have no jobs.
Yeah. That was exactly what it was like with the podcast voters. They're
I've had somebody when I was working at when I worked at Stewart's, I had when the election between Obama and Romney, I was working a night shift, and on election day, one of the guys came and he's he's looking at the electoral college map breakdown. I was don't worry, Romney's got this. He's only leading because Democrats weren't working today because they don't work.
Yeah.
Republicans are getting out from work now, so we're gonna get this. And then he was there for 3 hours watching the news and just watching his face kind of slowly.
No, I think that in this case, it was really close between Dawn of the Dead and Night of the Living Dead, because I put out the poll and I really gave, I basically gave the Deads. You know, those were the 3 choices. And I'm not talking about the later Deads. I'm talking about the early Deads, like Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and Day of the Dead.
I do want to do the later Deads, though. Actually, to be honest with you, I want to do them all, but that's going to be a...
Well, everybody wanted to see... there was quite a few people who were commenting, and they were like, you should do them all at some point. And I said, well, we will at some point. I mean, maybe not in this particular episode, because that would be a lot to cover. You know, just to do them all in one episode, it'd be really tough. I think we'd have a lot more to say. We have a lot to say.
No, we would, because we just recently did a 3-movie episode for
that's hard,
and a friend podcast for the Friday the 13th series. We did parts 1 through 3, and that was, which at first I didn't think, like, man, we might get quite a bit to talk about the first one, but the second and third one I don't know how much, but we were wrong. we had
powered through those, yeah.
Yeah, we had a lot to say,
and it's and
I have a lot to say with the Dead series because I've seen them all.
Yeah,
I know you haven't seen one of them. You still haven't seen Diary, have you?
Oh, no, I have not seen Diary. You're right. Yeah. No, but, I mean, I want to do them all. I mean, I'm not particularly, like, itching to do Land or Survival, because I've seen both of those and I'm not a fan, but...
I'm itching to do both. I would like to do both of them.
I mean, I think they'd be fun in a way, but...
I say it's off topic, but it's not off topic, because like I said, even though the episode's about Night of the Living Dead, we are celebrating Romero.
We're celebrating George Romero and his life.
I will say, because I don't know when we'll get to Land of the Dead to do a full thing, but I will say when I first saw Land of the Dead, was not a fan at all. I have to be honest with you,
I wasn't either.
Absolutely disliked it.
Yeah.
I thought the casting in it was miserable. Outside of fucking Dennis Hopper, who is always fucking a brilliant bastard, especially when he's playing like an evil bastard.
Yeah.
But I didn't really. I didn't really enjoy it. I didn't really enjoy the plotting. I didn't really enjoy like what was going on in the movie, and I thought like it was pretty bland. Not only that, it came out the same year as the remake of Dawn, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And at the time, see, this is being a foolish teenager. I thought the remake of Dawn was like this is a good movie, and I hadn't seen the original Dawn of the Dead before I saw that. So I thought like Zack Snyder's Dawn, I thought that was a good movie. I liked it. So to me it was also weird just seeing like how like they both had a lot of like similarities, like the whole like fucking Lost World Jurassic Park trailer, RV thing of doom.
Yeah.
Trucking around like
they
get the studios together on that one.
Creating like the whole RV of Doom thing.
It's like we got like toys to sell, so both these movies got to have them in there.
That'd be
or something like that. That's like the cynical side of me. But anyway, when I first saw like Land, I didn't like it at all. And I liked the remake of Dawn. I thought it was pretty good. Now that I've gotten older and grown a little wiser, I can appreciate Land more. Not saying I love it. But it's like after, I don't think it's that as bad as a film as I thought it was. And now the remake of Dawn, I'm like, this is awful. This is an absolute albatross, terrible.
Oh, you think the remake of Dawn is awful? Yeah. I wouldn't say that it's awful. I think it's just different. It's like in that like sort of 28 Days Later.
But 28 Days Later
remake craze.
But 28 Days Later is like smart.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, I like Dawn of the Dead.
I sound like an idiot saying that.
Remake.
It's like smart.
No, I mean I like Dawn of the Dead as a remake.
There's some parts I like about it, like, and at the time kind of reflect really well, like the whole how they did like the whole news scenario and I did like I still like the opening of the whole.
Yeah, do you remember that when that like first came out and there was the opening the first 10 minutes or something where it was on Facebook or whatever, MySpace maybe at that time? Yeah, I think it was MySpace at the time. And that was on, the like everywhere, really. And I think they even aired it on TV. Actually, at one point, like there was like, here's the first 10 minutes of Dawn of the Dead. Yeah.
No, but it was really good. It was like really cool. The only thing I don't like about it is I don't like running zombies.
I agree. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of those.
The whole appeal to me with the zombie genre is the fact that it's the
menacing slowness of them,
and not only that, it's the numbers that's gonna get you.
the sheer number. And I think like we'll talk about that, but Night of the Living Dead does that pretty well in terms of like, oh, there's one, okay, that it's not a big deal. There's one. Like, obviously Ben can hit him over the head with a tire iron, and that's it. But then all of a sudden they multiply, and we'll talk about that a little bit when we get into Night of the Living Dead specifically. But I do like that as well, like just the sheer number of them and how they congregate and multiply. It's almost like, when you're talking about,
especially the fact the universe has been set up in the Dead series. It's not like there isn't an explanation. We don't know how people become zombies.
Yeah, Night tries to give us one, but really...
No, but all the films do. But they're not like explanations.
Yeah, it's not like that's the main one. It's like, that's definitely what happened.
Yeah, and Night, it's, there's a satellite.
There's a satellite that exploded.
That could have radiation that's doing it. And Dawn, the best guess is like, well, there's no more room in hell. We become decadent assholes. There's no more room in hell for souls, so they're just, coming to roam the earth now.
Yeah, much more, I guess, pessimistic viewpoint from that one.
And so on from, Day. And so, there's no continuity there, and I think that's totally fine. Because, to be honest with you, I don't know, in that setting, you would be able to find,
like, the main reason?
No, especially as, I know the films aren't joined together, but by the time you get to Day and how things, it's the zombie apocalypse has been going on for a while. No one's researching it
at that point.
Well, not only that, but in Day, by the time you get to Day, like I said, although the films are disjointed and they're not directly connected, it's following a time. We don't know how much time in Day, by the time we get to Day of the Dead, how much time has passed between the beginning and where they're at now. You just know at that point, about 1% of the population's left. And the group you're following is literally a very small band of people who are held up in a military bunker. And the scientist there, the main scientist, is just more worried about trying to figure out, well, we can't fucking figure it out. We don't have the resources. We don't have the people. We don't have anything to do. Yeah. So instead of trying to figure out how it happened and how to fix it and how to, make it so they're not, we're going to just try to figure out how to deal with it.
Yeah, it's not really important at that point, what happened. Yeah. They don't really care at that, it's who cares what made them this way? We need to figure out how to stop this from
and then by the time we get to land, it's well, we don't fucking know. We just kill them and we build, we finally were able to kind of assemble some resemblance of civilization by building, bigger cities, and we can kind of keep watching, and that's that.
Yeah. I think that's the most interesting part about the building of the franchise, because as we'll talk about a little bit, Night of the Living Dead is the most disconnected from the rest of the Dead films in terms of not only it's when it first premiered, but also the way that it treats its zombies and how they move and how they operate, their fears, like fire. It's very much a different sort of scenario than Dawn of the Dead when you get into it, and the zombies have evolved. I guess you would say in this case, if you're giving benefit to the screenwriters and the director's vision, they evolved.
Which would be George Romero.
Right, exactly. They evolved. Rather than, just saying oh, well, they decided to go a different route for this one.
And again, it makes sense though, out of all the films, this to be, Night to be the most disjointed.
Yeah,
because I'm pretty sure he hadn't, after that, he was all right, that's it.
Yeah, there's no thought process. This was the baby.
He wasn't planning on doing a sequel, even though it made a shit ton of money, especially for the budget that it had.
Oh, sure, yeah.
He's just probably all right, and then down the road, he's probably,
it was the baby of his his idea, and it was such a low budget at the time anyway that he was probably just happy to get this out and not thinking into the future and well, now that I've got Night of the Living Dead out, I've got to think about the sequels that have got to come after it, and they've got to fit with the everything that we did with Night of the Living Dead. It's I definitely don't fault that for, in terms of how you view Night of the Living Dead, and then you go right to Dawn of the Dead, and it's completely, it's a little bit different in terms of how the zombies operate, but it's interesting how that came to be and how different the zombies become as we get further into the series. What do you want to take a break? and we'll come back and we'll talk about some beer, and then we'll
A little bit about Romero.
go a little bit into Romero, and then into Night of the Living Dead.
Sure.
All right, sounds good. We'll be back. Stay tuned. We're going to hear from one of our podcast friends.
Hi, this is Derek from The Wild Pitch, and I'd like to talk to you about something that's very important to me. My podcast, The Wild Pitch. Now, since you clearly don't have access to a skip button, listen to this.
Eat as many brats as possible.
And this.
An in-home cat communication system that allows your feline friends to talk to you through a series of intricate bell rings and button presses.
And how about that?
I imagine it would be about as satisfying as drinking orange juice after having a burrito.
Find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google, I don't know, stare into the sun and you might hear it. It'll buzz in your ears.
What a great message from our podcast friends. Definitely give them a shot and have a listen.
Check them out.
Love supporting our podcast friends.
I love it when they support us.
That's right. We have a good support team. So. All right, so let's talk a little bit about...
It sounds like a nice PSA.
That's right, it was. Yeah, it was.
Hey, kids,
how to support
just
podcasts.
Don't do drugs.
How to how to support your friends and promote yourself and your self-worth as well, and feel good about yourself.
I'm Stewart Smalley.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about George Romero. We talked somewhat about some of his dead films. What do you mean to you as a director and his films specifically? I mean, obviously, you are probably most well versed in his dead films, I would think,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
I have seen his other films, not just the dead films. I've seen, The Crazies and haven't seen Martin.
Which we talked about, and
And
people were really interested in having us do Martin too. We
And
had
I
a few
did
write-ins
too.
for Martin.
And I did too, because I read online that's his favorite film.
I said it would be too confusing. You'd just be confused all the time. You're like, who's he talking about, Martin? I said you'd have to be Chris for that episode. You couldn't be Martin because we'd constantly be saying Martin, and then it would just get
Like,
confusing.
huh?
Yeah.
What? But no, I haven't seen that, but I've seen The Crazies a couple of times. I think that's... But it's definitely the dead films I've seen the most. I've seen Night of the Living Dead. I've seen 1,000,000 times. I've seen Dawn of the Dead 1,000,000 times.
Quite a few times.
And I've seen Day of the Dead 1,000,000 times.
Which one's your the one that you've seen the least amount of times?
Out of all the dead films?
Out of the trilogy there, the first three.
First three?
Yeah.
Day.
Day's the one that you've seen the least.
But it's-
Same for me.
But it's narrow. Because Day 2 is also one that I didn't care for at first either.
Yeah.
It took a second viewing to be kind of like, I get it now. Like the first time I saw it, I was like, the effects are great in this. This, Tom Savini working this is fucking great. But it's like some of like just the weird choices, like because again, when you think about it, Day was made in the heart of the 80s, so you had this weird Caribbean tropical synth score going on throughout. And I thought that was like weird and like this is distracting. But like now I think I'm like, man, like this is one of the best parts of the film. It's just kind of like how off-putting and
I think that has to do with like the atmosphere of it too. Is like in the military base and stuff.
Yeah.
It feels a lot different than like the mall from Dawn of the Dead.
just like the same thing. Well, you could say the mall is iconic, but the same thing like the farmhouse too is iconic. It's
I mean, the farmhouse certainly has inspired quite a few other things. One of them being the weakest season of The Walking Dead.
every season's the weakest season.
Yeah. Well, but I would say season 2 is the weakest. But but I think all of the films have some sort of iconic element to them. And I would say that I understand where you're coming from with Day of the Dead because it does feel so different. Like if even though the zombie element is still pretty close to Dawn of the Dead, the atmosphere of it and like the makeup composition of the film itself does feel different than Dawn of the Dead.
I think too that and I'm not saying with Dawn and like, well, not Dawn, but I'm not saying with like Day. I would say after Night, I'd say Night and Dawn do a lot of innovating. It's not like my opinion. everyone would say. Dawn and Night are very innovative. I'd say Day is innovative, but in the sense of like its setting and like some of its story elements, it's very cliche for the 80s. The fact that it is like a military base and every line is like fuck this, fuck that. It's like, you know, something you'd expect from like
a lot of cursing.
Like an 80s action, you know, horror film. So like it fits in the realm, but I think what Romero does with Day is innovative and does end up turning something to be something unique and interesting and totally different from the norm. I'd say the same thing with like Land. You know, Land 2 has like an aesthetic to it that's, you know, kind of fits in the time that it was made and seems like it's influenced in the time that it was made, but it does enough there to like, you know, stand out and be like interesting enough. I'd say where it kind of falls off is like with like Diary, where it's like you can tell like, okay, like Cloverfield and like movies like that came out, so it's like, oh, it's gonna be handheld and in that respect, you know, that it doesn't work.
The found footage style.
Yeah, and it doesn't, you know, it's unfortunately not successful enough in, you know, taking something that's going on in the time and then adapting it into something of its own and, you know, like, wow, what a great film.
Yeah, I know a lot of people actually do like Diary a lot, and I confess I haven't seen it.
So I don't.
No, I know you don't.
I don't at all.
I know
but
that
it's not. It's.
I know a lot of people have said that they did enjoy it for what it was. So it's. I mean, it's interesting. I can't say either way because I've never seen it before. But
see, that's why I would like to do Diary, because one, I think. I don't know where you'd find the enjoyment in it because it's too ham-fisted in its like message of,
and that's part of the reason why I didn't like Survival is because of it's so ham-fisted, and it's very
even
cheesy.
No, but it's even worse in Diary because it's the whole plot of Diary, and I'm not trying to disparage the man now. Right now it seems
he's
like
dead, Martin.
Oh, I know,
he's dead.
I know, but you don't like it's not proper to.
No, I know. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay. Well,
go easy on the man. He can't fight back now.
I am. But my point is, like, the whole plot of Diary is, like, the whole cultural context and, like kind of, like, social political view on it is, like, how media is become this behemoth and we become obsessed with it and how it relates to us and then become, like, with the internet and TV and... That's why it does a whole found footage style, because it's like these film students are filming the beginning of the zombie apocalypse starting to happen and what's going on, how like it's affecting them. Like, oh, my friend just got eaten and it's on camera. But that message is so like over the top because like one of their friends is getting attacked and like eaten, like put the camera down, like and like help them. And like I can't. This must be recorded on film. And it's like nobody's ever no.
He's like, got to document the entire thing.
Yeah, it's like, no, come on, no. That's fucking retarded. Granted, I think being that preposterous can work, but the talent, like, with the actors and stuff in the film is just not there to pull that off. So, I think if he had, like, the right talent underneath him to, like, kind of get that across, it could work. Like if it was, like, the people in Night and Dawn and Day... It's just not there, though, in Diary. So it's like you would need literally like a Ken Foree, you know.
Someone like that to lead it, to actually be able to...
Make, you know, yeah.
Entertain the audience. Yeah.
And make it, you know...
I don't think there is anybody in Diary that's even like a well-known actor, is there?
Not that I know.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean,
the only reason in Land is because it is a blockbuster. It wasn't an independent film. Universal. One of the cool things about Land is how it opens with the classic like Universal black and white intro. Of
kind of harkening back to
the third
Night of the Living Dead and stuff like that.
In the
30s. And Universal Monsters. I don't want to blow our load on all of these other Dead films because we're probably going to cover them at some point, I surmise. But let's just talk real quick. What is your favorite Dead film? Or should I have prefaced this beforehand? Should have asked you before the break.
It's a toss-up between Dawn or Day. Leaning probably slightly more towards Dawn.
I think I would say Dawn as well. I think
I think it's close. Again, all three of them I like a lot. I love a lot. I wouldn't have seen them like a million times if I didn't, I didn't like them. But I think there's certain things, like, to me, like, Night works the best from, like, a horror element. Dawn works the best from, like, the best part of, like, Dawn is, like, it's what's actually going on within the actual story and its characters and what's going on. Day, the strongest point about Day is, like, it's, Tom Savini's amazing effects in it. So, I mean, like, they all have, like there's certain parts from each film that, to me are, like, just so great and so memorable. At the same, and I'm not saying, like, I think Dawn's got, like, the best, characters and story. I'm not saying Night and Day don't either. I think everything, like, in all those films are strong, but I think total package Dawn's probably my favorite. But and it's probably slightly more than Day, which is then slightly more than Night.
Yeah, I think I pretty much agree with that. I think that Dawn's probably the best. I like the action sequences the most and the effects, and the soundtrack.
Goblin.
Yep.
Great.
And then I would say probably Day right after that because of the I like the film, but I don't like as much of the humor that, like, Bud gives it. Things like that. Even though it's not,
I think most of the humor comes from the batshit crazy captain.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, that I just feel like that's even a little bit more over the top. So I think I prefer the Dawn part of it.
I think it's purposefully, like, over.
I definitely agree. I think it's over the top on purpose in terms of, like, here's our military. You know what I mean? And here's. But
to be fair, I think like I said, you don't know at that point, like, how long the zombie apocalypse has been going on. But if it's going on long enough, there's fucking just alligators roaming Miami.
That's true.
And stuff. And like I said, like practically, like, only 1% of the population's left. If you, like, okay, our commander, this base is dead. Now you're in charge. You'd probably be like, I'm fucking in charge of this monkey farm, Frankenstein. You would be doing the same shit too, and being like, you're finding out, like, you've been fucking teaching him how to, like, read and shit. What the fuck are you doing?
No, I agree. I prefer the Dawn of the Dead's sort of, like, and it's not always serious, but I prefer that it's.
No, all you have to do is listen to some of, like, the lines. Like, we got this, man. We got this by the ass.
Yeah, that, any of the Tom Savini biker gang scenes. But I think I just prefer that one a little bit more. Maybe it's just a preference thing. Maybe I don't even know if I have, like, a reasoning behind it.
What's great about that, too? Because when you first saw it, you didn't really think it was all that great.
Yeah,
I can specifically remember reading it was one of your first blog reviews.
Could be, yeah.
On The Moon is a Dead World.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I was a huge fan of it at first.
Because there's a couple of reviews you did around that time, like that movie, Blade Runner. Like, my friend told me to watch this movie, that they're these revolutionary films. And then you're like, I don't get it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I'm not trying to sit here and call you a fraud. I'm just saying, like.
No, I know.
Because again, like I said, I really didn't like Day that much. I thought it was, like, this is kind of boring.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like Land at first. I thought that was, like, a piece of crap.
I still don't like Land that much. I gotta say.
I'm telling you, if you watch Diary and Survival and then watch Land, you'll be like, wow. All right.
I can definitely understand that part of it. Yeah, no, I definitely understand that. And, there are parts of Land that I do like. I like the whole Bush tie-in, as a metaphor. I like the whole...
God, doesn't that seem like fucking forever ago?
I like Asia...
Don't the Bush years just seem like forever ago? Like,
they seem like happy memories.
And you're almost like man, like, oof.
Remember when Bush put that children's book down calmly and proceeded to
go back
to the White House when 9/11 occurred. Those are good times, right?
Oh,
he didn't just jump to Twitter.
No, he didn't do that. He sat there and kept reading the book.
He was very calm about it. He didn't jump to Twitter and say anything bad about Muslim people. But no, I like that. I like Asia Argento in that just because she's Asia Argento. That's Dario Argento's daughter.
Yeah, I know.
By the way. But I don't have a fondness for Land that much.
Like I said, I'm not saying it's a great film, but I think it's like I said, I'm not saying
it's acceptable at this point. I do agree with that. Interesting tidbit is that it's getting re-released.
Yeah, I did see. No, I did see that. And I wanted
that and Dawn of the Dead, the remake.
Yeah.
So kind of interesting.
Makes me want to watch Shaun of the Dead.
Like I said, I don't want to blow our load on the rest of the films because we are going to cover them at some point. Do you have anything else you want to add about George?
Just briefly. What's your favorite not dead film?
Non-dead film. Creepshow is a lot of fun.
Yeah, but he didn't do the whole thing though, did?
No, but as a part of it, I would say that, and as a big part of it, in terms of bringing it to the screen, Creepshow. I
do love Creepshow. Even Creepshow 2 I do like.
Yeah, but that one, but we're not counting Creepshow.
No, I know. He wasn't really involved with Creepshow 2. I'm gonna say I know a lot of people don't really care for Creepshow 2, but I do like Creepshow 2.
Yeah, I would say Creepshow. What else? And probably, I guess the Crazies as well. Would probably be my two favorite. Even though like the Crazies you can almost kind of count within the Dead series. It's kind of like an offshoot of the Dead series.
No, it is, but I'd say that's more like 28 Days Later.
It is, yeah, for sure. I would say those two would be my next favorites.
Holy shit. He did a documentary on O.J. Simpson.
That I don't know. I've never seen that.
Neither have I. It's on his IMDb as we're looking at it
now.
He did a TV movie documentary for O.J. Simpson. Juice is on loose.
Gotta see it now.
That's set in 74, so that's gotta be the season where he ran for 2,000 yards. Bills Hall of Famer.
I guess so.
Yeah. Let's go, OJ. Win that parole hearing.
Yeah, I gotta say that post Monkey Shines, maybe even post The Dark Half, it kind of went downhill. I've seen Bruiser. It's not really that great. And like I said, I'm not fond of Land or Survival, and I haven't seen Diary, so I would say probably after The Dark Half, I kind of tuned out.
I mean, out of his films that aren't the Dead series, I've seen Crazies, and I've seen Monkey Shines and Creepshow.
I'm pretty certain that I've seen Season of the Witch. It sounds familiar, but I don't recall it that well, so I can't count that one. So I would say The Crazies and Creepshow would be my two non-Land or non-Dead picks.
I'd have to agree.
All right, so let's get into actually, you know what? Let's take a break for a second. We'll come back after a message from another podcast friend, and we'll talk about Night of the Living Dead.
This is Full Start, the show about those presumptuous pictures that studios were sure would spawn a franchise, but didn't.
Back on Eternia, Skeletor sort of locates the key on Earth with Google Maps, and then asks where his mercenaries are. He's had to walk past those mercenaries to get into the room.
Yeah,
guys, Skeletor is rude.
Go on. Okay, go on.
Film does not know what mercenaries are. Evelyn assembles them, but then introduces them to Skeletor as his finest warriors. Are they his warriors, or are they freelancers?
Okay, name them.
Beastman.
Come on. Come on, there's at least one. There's one that's an easy one.
I know.
Because some motherfuckers always try and ice skate uphill.
The Blade.
Thank you. Yeah, that's two.
Look, the fact that we were able to name two characters in this film
were able to name two.
Instantly makes it better than Planet of the Apes.
If you like that, you can hear more on iTunes, SoundCloud, Twitter, and Facebook at Full Starts Pod.
Welcome back. Thanks for sticking with us on our George Romero Retrospective / Night of the Living Dead episode. So we're going to go right into Night of the Living Dead right now. We watched again tonight.
Not the beer?
Oh, we didn't do the beer, did we?
I think you said we're going to be back with beer talk.
I didn't say that, actually. I said that we were going to be back with Night of the Living Dead talk, but you're right. We didn't do any beer tonight.
I bring this fancy new beer, and you got to go and...
I totally forgot about it, to be honest with you. Since we've got such a extended episode.
I am not buying anything for you anymore.
No, well,
you're on your own.
Well, let's talk about it. Tonight on the show, we have a new beer that's out at... And most people probably are not going to know what this is, but it's at our Stewart's shops in New York, and I think they're in Vermont. And that's about it. But they're basically like a convenience store / gas station that we have around the area.
/ ice cream parlor.
Yeah, / ice cream parlor. People love their ice cream, especially in Massachusetts. When I went to college, people were apeshit over Stewart's ice cream because they could only get it in Vermont. So it was like a big old... it's like, well, Ben & Jerry's is also stationed in Vermont. It's probably a little bit better.
Yeah, Ben & Jerry's, though, costs...
It's overpriced.
Yeah, when we went to fucking Lake George the other day, that smoothie that I got...
It was like $6.
It's like $7.50 for that small one.
It's pretty expensive there. Pretty sure. For sure, pretty expensive. But Stewart shops are pretty popular in our area. They pop up all over the place. Sometimes...
Not pretty popular. They are.
Sometimes a Stewart shop is across from a Stewart shop. That's
many times.
Yeah, that is not an uncommon sight to see in like a one of our smaller locales.
They're Starbucks before Starbucks.
That's right. And so apparently, they've had a regular old lager brew for quite a while now.
No, it's an ice beer.
Oh yeah, it is, isn't it?
And a light one.
It's technically an ice or a light beer.
They have an ice beer and a light one. There's an ice and a light variation.
Oh, okay. So they got two styles.
Yeah, originally it was just the ice.
Yeah,
just the ice, and then they added the light.
And that's called Mountain Brew.
Mountain Brew beer.
Mountain Brew beer.
Mountain Brew beer ice or Mountain Brew beer light.
Is it popular? You used to work at Stewart's.
Well, for one, most people around here...
They're going for the bush.
Well, besides that, most people around here at one point in their life have worked at Stewart's.
That's true.
I worked at Stewart's. My mom at one point worked at Stewart's. Sarah's mom at one point worked at Stewart's with my mom.
I have not, but I interviewed there. So yeah, pretty much everybody works at Stewart's.
Yeah, no, it's like a McDonald's job around here, except you fucking do a shit ton more than
yeah.
But no, people who bought that were drunks.
Or just looking for something...
Or people from out of state that find, like, the whole thing... Like, looks so terrible. We're gonna bring this back to Ohio,
Yeah. Yeah, it's not really that great. It's pretty cheap.
It was made by Jenny. Mm-hmm. When they first introduced Mountain Brew beer ice. It came in a 12... You got in a 6-pack only. Or you could buy it in the case of, like it coming in the actual case that we got it in. The 6-pack was $3.99. It was 12-ounce cans, and the case was $9.99 for the entire case. The can was this shitty, just silver can with somebody who took Microsoft Paint to it and like put like this terrible. You have to look it up. It's absolutely amazing.
I was one of the first purveyors of Mountain Brew.
We call it around here Panther Piss. But it was made by Jenny, and even though we both like Jenny, it's not good.
It's not a good beer. It's almost like Stewart's went out of their way to say, like, don't make it that good.
No, I guarantee they gave them the recipe, because, like, with their bread,
Yeah.
Like they have like their own Stewart's brand bread. Tastes a lot like Freihofers because it's made by Freihofers.
Mm-hmm.
Which, if you live in upstate New York, you know what the fuck Freihofers is. You're like, oh, Freihofers. You know, it's like the same thing with like Spack and Dave Matthews. You just
popular brand.
But Freihofers makes the bread, but Stewart's gives them like their own recipe.
Gotcha.
Same the cookies. Why do their cookies taste like Freihofers? It's made by Freihofers, so except it's like slightly tweaked, and you can't get them in the big box. You can only get them in the small box.
So that's the same thing with the Mountain Brew then, is that they gave them a recipe, and that's why it tastes like shit.
Probably, or I guarantee they probably got no one on the payroll at the corporation that knows anything about brewing, so they probably just have to Jenny you do something kind of like your beer, your Jenny Ice.
And Jenny was probably like, well, we're not going to make it as good as ours.
Well, probably for what they're getting paid, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think they make it anymore, because once they switched over the labels, and they switched from 12-ounce cans to 16-ounce cans only, I think they switched the contract. But I never found out who the contract was with when I was working with them, because I was curious. I haven't actually tried it since then when they switched those labels over. I haven't even tried one of these days I will, but I just can't bring myself to do it, even though it's so damn dirt cheap, but
we're not talking about Mountain Brew.
We will one day. Now that I think about it, like, we'll have to, when we do a shitty movie.
Yeah.
God, that's what we should have had for RoboCop.
Yeah, we'll do it one day, but actually today we have a new beer that they have, and they've recently branched out into craft beers. They wanna market to that demographic.
And I'm kind of surprised. This is actually something when I worked there, I was saying for like forever
that they should do.
So yeah, something for them to do.
Yeah.
Like back when the beer selection was limited, like, because back in 2013 and 12, you had like the beer cave craze. Like, all the stores are getting beer caves now. Like, there's not just like a couple doors of beer. We're gonna have a cave, like this big walk-in cooler you can go into to get your 30 packs and all these, and we'll have another assortment of beers.
Right.
Like, especially these craft beers for all, because where we live in the summertime, because we live on one of the upstate New York lakes, the Sacandaga. Where we live in the summertime, it's a tourist hotspot. You get a bunch of idiots come in, to vacation up here. This is poor man's Lake George. You can't afford to go vacation up to Lake George, you come to the Sacandaga. So, that's why, the whole... Before we, and especially over the past, I would say over the past decade, that's totally picked up. I don't remember when we were kids, this being, that big of a kind of, touristy spot.
Yeah.
Like, most people that would go on the lake were just people from the area. But, I think over the past, 10, 15 years, it's become a lot more touristy in the summer. So,
right.
I think and with the boom of craft beer, when you're getting all these people from, different locales, you want,
Yeah, Stewart's is wanting to branch out.
And have that variety, so people, who aren't just going to buy Bud Light, they got, they got
this
their...
new.
Yeah,
they got the new one. And this beer is called the High Cliff IPA. And what's interesting about this is that it's brewed by a local brewery. They're called Schmaltz Brewing Company. They're
craft brewing too.
Yeah, they're craft brewing, and they're based out of Clifton Park. They brew some pretty good beers,
kosher beers too.
Kosher beers
because they're Jewish.
That's right.
Even have they have the Hebrew ale.
That's right. Yeah, the Hebrew. Yeah. They are contracted by Stewart's to brew this beer.
It's even on the label.
It is very clearly.
I almost think that's I almost want to say maybe Schmaltz had them do that so people know hey, if you like this,
right? If you like this IPA, check out Schmaltz.
Yeah.
It's a great contract for them. I'm imagining because
they're not huge.
Yeah, Schmaltz isn't huge, but they're probably getting a lot of distribution from Stewart's because they have so many shops and so many areas.
They don't sell Schmaltz at the stores around here though.
No, they don't. Not very often, at least. So it's not getting, Schmaltz itself isn't getting out there, but if you're getting...
Maybe in Clifton Park and, Albany and stuff, they have, a 6-pack of Schmaltz on hand, but around here they don't.
Yeah. But, so the first thing that you notice when you check out the High Cliff IPA is the terrible, terrible labeling that's on it. Which
I can guarantee you for a fact that's the Stewart's decision.
It's got
that label is totally because
it doesn't match Schmaltz's at all.
Well, not only that, but Stewart's, again, for the people around here that are listening that aren't from upstate New York and don't know what Stewart's Shops is, they like to tote themselves as mom and pop. Like, we're a mom and pop store. That's our roots. We've been mom and pop for 70, 80 plus years, selling ice cream, coffee, and all sorts of delights to our community. We are closer to you is their slogan. They're not mom and pop though. They got nearly 350 stores. So yeah. I mean, mom and pop doesn't have 350 stores. So
no, and they also they love their locality. They love the geographic, like touting the geographic location.
Saratoga, Adirondack.
Yeah,
which that's why I laugh because like High Cliff as in the Adirondacks. And it's like you're fucking from Saratoga.
Yeah, right. There's no Adirondack. Yeah,
that's like why
it's not really the Adirondack.
That's why I laugh with like Saranac. Although we both love Saranac, they like have a lot of like Adirondack themed things. Like you're in Utica. Yeah. You're in the heart of the Mohawk Valley. Don't be. You're treading on Lake Placid and Adirondacks turf. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, but I gotta say that this High Cliff IPA, that's the first thing that sticks out to you is the labeling, and that's got to be a Stewart's idea.
And the packaging feels weak too. When you lift that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree.
When you're holding, like when you pick that like actual package up, no, like hold it by the handle.
It feels like cheap cardboard.
Like it's gonna break, even though it's got this nice glossy finish to it. It feels like I almost thought like a couple of times carrying it that like it was gonna give out on me.
No, I agree. I think that the whole thing about it like is chintzy from the actual packaging to the labeling itself. The labeling is very much like somebody went on Shutterstock. And they're like, we need like a generic sunrise mountain view. And they're like, got the perfect picture for you. And it was on a Shutter, they bought it like as a stock photograph.
Probably like a nice Pacific Northwest photo, not the Adirondack.
I gotta be honest with you, Schmaltz has its like own style in terms of like what they put out for beer.
Well, again, it's very it's
Hebrew inspired. And I think that their labeling and stuff is very interesting, which now this High Cliff IPA is very much the opposite. Like if you were looking in a store and you didn't know anything about any of the beers that are on there, you're just looking at them based on labeling. High Cliff IPA would probably be the last one that you would ever look at because it's just so generically like it just does not stick out at all.
I think the target demographic for this would be somebody, when you look at it, is somebody, again, who's not from the area, who's like stops in, they're like looking for like an IPA or something. Again, you're not from the area.
And it looks local.
So the only IPA that like they have there that's like a well-renowned national is Sierra Nevada. So if you're not from the area, you see this, the High Cliff, where you see like Adirondack, you might go with the High Cliff because it's $1 cheaper. Like, I don't know anything really about it, but hey, I'll give it a try.
Right.
That or someone who's not, doesn't really know much about
craft. Or looking for new stuff and they're in the area. Yeah. I mean, I could see that. But at the same time, like for us, I'm not attracted to this labeling at all. I think that like had I not known that it was from Schmaltz or that the sort of nostalgia of it being from Stewart's, I would not be interested in this at all. Even you're not supposed to judge a book by its cover, but I'm certainly judging it by the labeling. But I will say that the IPA part of this is good. It is a solid and middle of the road IPA.
I'd give it 3 out of 5. Not 3.5. 3 out of 5 stars. It's just an IPA to me.
It's an IPA. It's very middle ground. Yeah. It's not going to offend anybody who likes IPAs. They're not going to be like, wow, that's a terrible IPA. No one is also going to be swayed. Like, if they don't like IPAs and they try this, they're not going to be like, well, this brings something different to the table.
No, it's totally... And it's not... I will say the one thing I like about it's not a West Coast IPA. Because the West Coast IPAs are the ones that I'm sick of.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's actually pretty mild on the hopping side of it. Like, you're not getting bombarded.
It's hoppy, but it's not,
Yeah, I mean,
it's not like... Oh, my tongue's trying to decipher 30 different hops that, they decided to fucking throw in here. One from each fucking country in Europe that was specifically grown in specific soil. under these certain conditions.
Yeah, that's kind of why I almost forgot about doing the beer talk on this. Actually, is because like it's not memorable. You're not gonna come away with it thinking this is the best IPA that I've tried in a while. At the same time, like you're not gonna come away with it being like, I didn't like that. It's really just a middle of the ground. If you're looking for something to drink on, a regular summer day or something like that, sure. The thing that bothers me the most, though, is that for a 6-pack, it's really not even that much cheaper than going with something that is a little bit better.
And well, I think the demographic, I think, has more to do with it.
I agree.
The whole what they're going for.
I almost think, like, I get what they're going for with Schmaltz, too, because Schmaltz putting out a Stewart's beer is not going to want to go super experimental. They're going to want to go middle of the road. And it makes sense for them to accept this contract because they're going to get out to a lot of places. At the same time...
Because I'm guaranteeing Schmaltz probably isn't going... Because Stewart's around here goes all the way up to the Canadian border.
Yep.
All the way up to like Plattsburgh and Canton. As south is like Newburgh and as west is Syracuse.
And then they're into Vermont too.
And they have like 15 stores in Vermont.
So that's a pretty large distribution.
So and I don't think Schmaltz really goes out too far outside the capital area. Which
exactly.
Would be Albany.
Albany, Clifton Park, Queensbury, stuff like that. So I think that that is it's a good contract for Schmaltz. And I think that them running middle of the road with this IPA is probably a good thing for them because people are going to stop into Stewart's. They're going to grab this IPA. They're not going to be turned off by it.
I want to go to Schmaltz Brewery. I mean, we want to because
Yeah, absolutely.
But I want to go there and like ask like someone there like, so like what ask them about like the whole like contracting
yeah. I mean, this definitely isn't their best beer.
No, but I wouldn't expect it to be.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect it to be, and it's certainly not like a bad beer either. So I think they've really hit on the target that they wanted.
And who knows, if it sells well enough, maybe we'll see High Cliff Session IPA.
That's true. Yeah, maybe because this is actually high at 6.2%. That's pretty high ABV.
And you don't feel it at all.
No, not really. I mean, it's pretty high ABV for IPA like this. So kind of interesting.
It's more normal.
I would say an IPA like this is probably more like 5.5.
It's 6.
This is 6 point. This is like running up towards like 6.5%. I think it's a little high.
6.2.
Yeah. So I mean,
I think that's more.
I think it's a little high on that scale actually. But I would say that this is a good job, and anybody looking for a regular style IPA would not go wrong with a High Cliff. Just get past the labeling.
But
get past the labeling, and you'll be okay.
Yeah. So if you've never heard of Stewart's, but you stop in upstate New York and you see Stewart's, stop in and try it. Just be warned. The cashier is being miserable. It's because they've worked there a long time.
That's true.
Don't take it out on them.
No, that's true. That's true.
Retail is hell.
All right, you know what? Because we're running long, let's roll right into Night of the Living Dead.
We're not running long.
We're running long.
No, we're not.
Yeah, we are.
We got a lot to talk about.
Well, we do. That's true. So
this is Wolf. This is Anderson Cooper taking over like Jake Tapper's show right now. Jake Tapper's supposed to go on. Guess what? Breaking news with Anderson Cooper still going on. You don't get to see Jake Tapper.
I don't know what any of that means.
You don't get to see the lead tonight.
I don't watch any of that.
Well, you need to watch more CNN because it's literally the same stories just over and over again with
different anchors.
Just about. Well, I feel like Wolf Blitzer's The Situation Room's on for like 8 hours straight. It's not, but it feels like it.
All right, so Night of the Living Dead. Probably one of the first things that I want to bring up about Night of the Living Dead is actually one of its worst points. Is Barbra.
As I say, in memoriam.
Yeah, exactly. Is Barbra. Because Barbra is probably the film's worst character by far, and the biggest flaw in Night of the Living Dead.
I would say all the women in this film are fucking terrible.
Well, that's true.
It's not just Barbra. Every woman in this film is useless. Barbra is not useful. She gets traumatized.
Immediately goes into like catatonic shock.
Yeah, catatonic shock. And she's gone for the rest of the film. Judy
is
just
barely almost non-existent.
Just meathead Beach Boy wannabes. Oh gosh, golly gee, man's girlfriend, who's just there like because he's got to have a girlfriend, and Helen, the wife, she's again literally just there to be like, I hate my husband.
I love how I love how John Russo and George Romero made her such a bitch in this film, though, because I mean, yes, granted, her husband is a total dick, and he's constantly a dick.
And that's why she's not getting dick, because he's a dick, so he's too busy being a dick to himself and being proud of his dick, and she's like, I want dick, and that's why she's looking at Ben like, I want his dick.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, they did really go out of their way to make Helen such a major bitch in this film.
I wouldn't say you're being sexist. No,
I'm not being sexist.
No, I know.
But I just think that
I'm joking with, for the love of God, I'm joking with that one. Jesus Christ. No, I don't think she's being a bitch. I mean, she's bitchy at times, but she's not being a bitch. If she's coming off as bitchy and being a bitch, she has every right to be a bitch because her husband's a fucking asshole.
Yeah, that's true.
If I was married to her too, I'd be like, you're a fucking asshole. Our daughter's dying of like some kind of fever that we don't know, and you're too busy like, I gotta be right. A black man is trying to tell me what to do. This is 1968. I don't want to deal with that shit. I don't want to deal with I voted for fucking Governor Wallace, goddammit. The Dixiecrats will rise again.
That's
why, why?
If anybody is questioning a black man's role in power, it's certainly Tom. Because he definitely comes off as the stereotypical guy who does not want to take any crap from a black person.
But at the same time, I don't know if it's intentional or not. I don't think it is.
I don't think... Yeah, you're right.
I mean, you can totally infer from that. Again, as we've talked about before on the podcast, jokingly saying about how, like, when, like, it comes to, like say, like, Dawn of the Dead's, like, commentary, like, oh, the zombies and the mall represents, like, consumerism and the greed, and it's like, I don't really think Romero was thinking about that. It just kind of happenstance its way into the film. Jokingly saying that, because I really do think there's elements of that. But at the same time, I think even more so at night, I think it's more happenstance in this film. Because from reading from interviews, he didn't cast Dwayne Jones to be Ben because he was black. He said because that was the best guy who was for the role.
And I definitely...
So I think it's more just like a happy accident that like you have a strong black lead in 1968 when that's... Outside of Sidney Poitier, you're not really seeing that,
I honestly think that says more about George Romero as a person than it does the film itself as a theme. Because you're right, I don't think that's really intentional in terms of, like, let's have a strong black character who leads everybody else and, and
is willing to fight against,
you can even kind of see that metaphor play out towards the end of the film as Ben is shot by the posse, and as like a,
and then the fucking end credit stills.
It almost like you can see that as a metaphor, and it even works today. As in terms of like police shootings and black violence and Black Lives Matter, things like that. You can see it today, but I don't think that is intentional. You're right. I think that it was more so the fact that George Romero just said, hey, this guy's pretty fucking awesome in this role, and I want him in the film. And I don't know if that says more about George Romero at that time being like, sure, let's cast a black guy. I don't care. it doesn't matter who he is.
It's an independent film, so it's not like... It's not like
let's cast a black guy.
It's not like Columbia's making. They're like, whoa.
Hey, hold on a second here.
We have Robert... You sure you don't want Robert Redford for this?
No, I agree. I mean, I think it just says more about George Romero that he was willing to admit, perhaps...
Not willing, but he's like... He's just like, he's the best guy. He's just like, he's the best suit for the role. He plays the part perfectly. And that's what I want. And then what transposes, everyone's like, picks all these things up. Again, like I said, it's a happy accident. I don't think all of those like political things that like people get away from this film are intended. But at the same time, this is the great thing about art. Doesn't really, at the end of the day, matter what the artist's intention is. It's the audience's what they infer from it. Like, you know.
Yeah. You can absolutely ascribe certain elements to it.
So, I mean, there's a certain part to, like, artist intention. Like, because, again, you hear a lot of times, like, I'm trying to think of off the top of my head, but I might have a hard time right now. But thinking of, like, certain things where, like, an artist has, like, a specific intention. And then people are, oh, this is what I got from it. And they're like, no, this is what it's supposed to be like. And everyone's like, I don't get that at all. This is, you know.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at this point. And I think that it's really interesting about Night of the Living Dead because you're right. Night of the Living Dead, for the majority of it, especially in terms of its dialogue and things like that, it doesn't really have a political motivation. It's
just survival.
It's a survival movie about people finding out that. And maybe the only real thematic political motivation for this film is just that we can't really trust our own government. In terms of, I think that's probably the biggest theme that comes out.
I wouldn't say government per se. I'd say it's more people.
Yeah.
I think it's more, you have to have trust in people. If you don't have, because again, if you think about the whole situation that happens in the barn, if they actually worked together, they would have been fine. Yeah, none of the shit that happens to them would have gone down the way it did if they just worked together. But all the characters are, like, not all the characters, because it's mainly just Ben and Tom that are having, not Ben and Tom, Ben and Harry.
Right.
That are having that power struggle between, like, you know, who's right and who's wrong, while everyone else is kind of just ancillary, like, you know, Tom, like, is just, like, trying to weigh both sides, like, you have some good points and you have some good points, we should do this, and then the wives and the girlfriends are just kind of like, whatever, we're just here, you know. So I think it's more, I think it's not more like you can't trust, it's not about not trusting the government, it's more about the fact that the zombies are in this film, and then later on in the series, are so impactful, even though they're slow, lumbering, and clumsy, is the fact that in numbers, you can easily be overwhelmed by them because you're overwhelmed in numbers. If you work together, you would easily be able to get out of the situation. So and that's a theme throughout every single Dead film, is the fact that the characters in the film don't gel and have their own struggles with themselves and their party, that they all end up getting fucked because they can't get along. If they just kind of, you know, set their differences aside and work together, they'd be fine.
Yeah.
And that's the main part of this. If Ben, you know, because you can say, like, Ben's a great, you know, he's a great, strong black character. At the same time, if at some points he's willing to, like, okay, you know, I'll listen to what you have to say.
Yeah, he does have that issue with...
He's very, you know, we praise, a lot of people praise him for being so, you know, such a strong character, but at the same time, he's just as stubborn as Harry. The difference is, Harry comes off as more crazy. Ben's a little bit more cool-headed, but they're both stubborn. They're both set, like, I'm right, and this is what we need to do. Instead of trying to compromise, like, as Tom was trying to do in the whole thing, like, Ben's like, we should stay upstairs in the barn. That way, if we get surrounded or something, we'll have at least a way to break out. And Harry's like, no, we need to go down the cellar. It's the safest. We'll be able to bar ourselves up and be good. If they just took the Tom perspective of, like, well, why can't we be upstairs? And look, if we have to fall back, we can fall back to the cellar. Because if we're in the cellar, we have nowhere to run. If they decide to come in. But they don't, because they're both strong, you know, strong-headed. So,
yeah, it's either one or the other. It's so like either you're in the basement or you're upstairs.
So it's black and white, pun not intended. I think that's the central theme. If they just decided to work together, they then would be able to easily get out. Again, you think about it, they work together, and instead of, like, sitting in the barn, they could break out, and they're in a fucking open field. An open field would be a very easy way to get away from zombies.
Especially when they know they don't walk very fast.
Yeah.
They're shambling, so they know that.
They would have a very easy time, but again, it's the fact that their inability to work together and to cooperate is what fucks them all over. And that, again, that's not just this film, it's all the films. It's a central point in dawn. It's a central point in day. It's a central point in land. It's in all of them. So, and I think that's the biggest takeaway.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I was talking about government though too, is that in this film the cutaways to the TV and radio parts of the film are pretty important too, because those are really our only.
It's so different from today, and I love that.
Yeah, I know. Those are our only real view into like what's actually happening in the world besides our characters.
And they're studious. That's the great thing. The news reporters are studious in trying to inform people. Again, not like CNN or MSNBC, Fox, like breaking news and like this is why this asshole's wrong. This is why this asshole's wrong. We'll have a debate. It's literally just like we're like, okay, we just gotta. Literally, they even say in the thing like the local news channels have banded together, local stations have banded together to form this emergency network to keep you supplied with news. Could you see that today, like Fox, in the moment of like crisis?
They're like
if a nuke or something went off, like in the United States, like okay, we'll have like Fox and CNN and MSNBC decide to have like a joint like operation to work together to get like this is what's going on. Oh my god, what a terrible thing. This is what we need to do to get people informed. They'd be like, no, fuck that. They'd
be like fighting over each other.
Yeah.
To be the first one to interview. Yeah, absolutely. I can see that. Yeah, I love that. I think the biggest thing that we get with those break-ins though is the fact that no one really knows what's going on, and we know that they're in some way our government and their scientific experimentation is to blame. Even though we don't know exactly what is happening. It's just funny how they all disagree in that one interview between, scientists and generals and things like that. They're all disagreeing about what is the cause of this occurrence. And even I will say, they're all very cordial to one another, calling each other, saying things like, I must disagree with these gentlemen. It's like, that would not be happening today
again. And I thought we agreed that we didn't agree that was the cause of what's going on.
So very cordial.
You'd have a panel of 4 on Fox, like people just fucking yelling at each other, or CNN or whatever.
I know. I love that part of it because everybody's so well, we must agree to disagree. We can't come to a consensus on what actually occurred. So I respect this gentleman's opinion, but I must say that I find him incorrect in that assumption.
The internet has destroyed that.
That's right. You can't just be wrong at this point, or you can't just think like someone's opinion is wrong. It has to be wrong, and you're right because of this. And it is a fun moment. But I think that's a big part of it too. Is that and that's why the film and Romero focuses on those parts of it, is that we have to see that like there is no actual cause for the
you don't need it
zombies. You don't need it, but at the same time there is that dissension within higher ranks. It's like, what happened? Like, what did we do? Something was done.
I think it's more the paranoia you're supposed to.
I don't know. From what I get from that scene is more so like we know we fucked up. Like somewhere fucked up.
I mean,
and we can't come to a consensus on how to describe it.
But at the same time, like the rest of the films, they don't. Like I said, each film has like a different kind of spin. So again, I don't think. I mean, granted, if you look at this film on its own, then yeah, you could kind of infer that. But from what we know from the rest of the films is there's nothing concrete, and some of the things that they kind of do to kind of hint towards something, they're literally just there. So like it's like that's an interesting idea. At the end of the day, they don't fucking matter. The whole how the dead become living. It doesn't matter. It's not even crucial. It's not even like a significant plot point. In fact, I wouldn't even want that like really explored. I don't need to know how.
You don't want to know how it actually occurred.
No, because it's not important to what's going on.
It was like an alien parasite that crash landed on Earth. You wouldn't want to know.
No, because that would be
I know. I'm just saying.
I know, but that would just make it like totally fit in.
No, I agree. It would be like at that point. I think if Romero was still alive and he eventually said, this is actually what caused the events of.
I was inspired by B movies from the 50s.
This is actually what caused the Dead films.
Which, by the way, this film is.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll talk about it in a second. But if he was to come out and say like, this is the cause of the Dead films, I think in everybody would be in some way disappointed, even if it was like exactly what you thought it was. I feel like you'd still be disappointed because there's nothing that's now at this point, having it not been answered for we'll say 3 films in the original trilogy. You're not going to be surprised or impressed. It's going to have been guessed at some point, and I don't think that it matters. You're right.
Because it's like with Star Wars. I know you're not well versed in Star Wars, but it's like with Star Wars. When you get to the Phantom Menace, you have Qui-Gon saying like, "Why is Anakin such like apparently a Force adaptee? Oh, he's got little things in his bloodstream called midichlorians, and that's what gives him his Force." It's like you ruined the Force.
Yeah, because there's the mystery involved, and it doesn't matter.
It's fine that like it's the Force was fine being just like the spiritual idea of like some people have this connection to nature and have this awareness in self and are able to do these things. To connect it like, oh, there's these parasites in your body, in your bloodstream called midichlorians that help you be able to do these things. Like, well, you just fucking ruined it. Thanks, George. Thanks, asshole.
Not this George. Not George.
I know, yeah. But no.
I agree.
So
I'm
the Dead films. Wouldn't ever want it to be. Here's a definitive reason why it happened. Because again, like I said, it doesn't matter. The whole point of these films is the struggle in humanity to be able to overcome adversity by not being able to work together. And again, that fits well with the time period. If you talk about like I said,
historical.
I don't think it's intentional, but again, the whole civil rights movement, and then later like the Black Power movement of the late '60s, which was going on at this time.
Yeah, I would say that's unintentional.
No, I'm not saying that's inferred in this film, but after watching the film, you could easily say like that whole the whole idea that Harry's not like you could infer is like, I have a black guy telling me what to do. What the hell?
You can see that subtext.
You can see that subtext. Again, I'm not saying, and I don't think it's intentional whatsoever. If you infer that from the film, though, I can totally see it. And you can and totally understand it.
I mean, you can also see it in terms of just a simple, evolutionary complex, too, of, like, survival of the fittest. Obviously, Harry, at that point, is
an older man.
He's not making the best decisions, and there's that evolutionary aspect, too, of
he's a coward.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a coward, and Ben is not.
And
he's willing to take the fight.
There's an inferiority complex in there. There's a lot of things that you could infer from the film that probably were totally unrelated to what George Romero was actually going for, which was pretty much at this time, let's make a entertaining horror film. Yeah. Really, I don't really. I mean, I think that you could ascribe a lot of things to it, and even George Romero could say, like, I did mean some of this to be metaphorical, but at the same time, I really think that the actual idea of Night of the Living Dead just stemmed from, let's make a pretty entertaining,
fun B horror film. Yeah.
Horror film. And like you said previously, we'll talk about this a little bit now, this Night of the Living Dead is certainly, even though it's 1968, so that's kind of advanced in terms of like movie history. We're still in black and white, even though at this point in time
it's gone.
We don't need to be in black and white. It could be a color film. The availability of color film is certainly out there.
If you're a big major studio, you definitely have the money for Technicolor.
You're filming in Technicolor.
Which, by the way, or the different scopes. Which, by the way, that's something I miss
of Technicolor film.
There's like film and Technicolor, or like film and CinemaScope. Like it's like where like fuck you digital for ruining that. Like those like.
But that black and white, that kind of aged quality, even in 1968, lends itself to those B-movie inspirations that obviously were helpful to George Romero in creating this film. when we talk about like historical horror films, Night of the Living Dead often comes up because of its zombie. It's zombie characters.
It's the Godfather of zombie
It's the
films.
creation of zombies as we know them now.
The modern
ones. But in this time period, in 1968, I would venture a guess that George Romero was pretty familiar with the zombie films of old in the 30s. And even earlier than that, like if we're talking about like I Walked with Zombie, like earlier than that.
I was reading online that he said he didn't think they were zombies.
He didn't think that his Night of the Living Dead creatures were zombies?
Like just like more like ghoulish.
Which, yeah, sure. I mean, I would say it doesn't really matter in terms of like how he characterizes them, but I would say that he probably at that time period was at least familiar with zombie films of old.
No, I'm not saying he didn't know because he did. He was saying like he's like, oh, I didn't like those zombie films of old. I didn't think what I was doing was like that at all.
Yeah,
but again,
I can definitely see that. It's just interesting to see like the evolution of the zombie film, because those original films were very much steeped in like, I would say, racist voodoo qualities, in terms of like we don't really understand the voodoo nature,
which it's the whole like zombie thing is it's voodoo now.
Yeah. I mean that was the big thing at the time during like the 1930s, especially like when we were talking about white zombie and things like that. We're almost borderline racist. Like, what's voodoo? We don't really understand it, so we'll just say like it's a bad thing. It's a horrible thing that turns people into these zombies that they don't have the capacity to think or feel anymore. They're just slaves. And then it kind of like takes that quality and turns it on its head. And I would say that probably if we're talking about in terms of either voodoo zombies or George Romero zombies, I would think that it probably would be a little bit worse to know in Romero zombie films that, hey, at some point I'm going to become that.
Whether you're bitten or not.
There's no
when you die, you become a zombie.
Yeah, there's no like out from that unless you kill yourself and you shoot yourself in the head. You can't get out of it. And it's really interesting in Night of the Living Dead that scientists and the news, they pick up on that so quickly. It's like all of a sudden everybody's just like, we realize that you have to shoot him in the head.
Well, they probably had one the government testing. They probably had like one chain they caught chained up, like something like Day of the Dead, chained up, and they shot at it. And like, why is this thing fucking still moving? And they had one like get plugged in the head, and like,
that does it.
Oh, it's been 5 minutes. He's not moving.
Yeah, that did it. All right, shoot him in the head.
Which I will say is kind of one of the things. I will say it's kind of a weak point for me.
In Night of the Living Dead?
And just
or in the Dead series.
In the Romero's zombie films at all. I think the fact that like, especially the whole idea, like, I don't think in this film, but as like I said, like with Dawn, like the whole like, when there's no room in hell, your soul, the dead will rise and roam the earth type thing. Like, okay. So why is it that nothing, they can't get killed, but if you shoot them in the head, or you do brain damage to them, they're dead?
The synaptic qualities of the chemical makeup of the brain.
I mean, I think it'd be much more creepy if they just can't die. No matter what you do, maybe you can slow them down.
Yeah,
but they can't. They just can't die, and that would make it like a lot like
In terms of zombies, that would be like the absolute worst. Is that there's just this unstoppable force, and it's like, well, you shot them in the head. You shot them. The only thing you can really do is chop off the limbs, and like hopefully they
stub their way.
Yeah, they can't really get around anywhere. So you have to. But in that sense too, that would be pretty horrifying for the people that know at a certain point, like, I'm probably going to be that. I'm probably going to be a lifeless body.
Well, no, it's not that. It's not that. Like, you are, because again, if you die, no matter how you die in this universe, you're going to become a zombie.
Yeah, and especially if you can't kill them, then you would know at some point, like, I'm just going to be a body at that point.
With this endless hunger.
Yeah, it is pretty spooky, and I can absolutely see in 1968 why that kind of theme
especially in the horror films of the day.
Yeah,
where...
would be scary for audiences at that time because you have that. You have to kind of think in terms of like what they hadn't seen at that time, and that kind of endless lust for hunger is it kind of makes you see your entire world differently, your religion differently. It's a very weird sensation to think that like, well, maybe there is life after death, and maybe it's not as good as you thought it was. Maybe it's not like the heaven that you were expecting. I think that kind of added to it in sort of a blasphemous way too. In with religion, it's
I think you're inferring more.
Reaching, yeah, exactly. I don't know exactly how 1968 audience goers felt, but I can see how that would be an experience. Now we're not super religious. We don't have a lot of people who are constantly attending church and things like that. But at the time, I can see how that would be a scary prospect for moviegoers who hadn't seen that previously. And I think Romero, when you're watching it now, it's a little bit hard to see like Night of the Living Dead as an actual scary film. Like when you're watching it, do you really?
No.
I don't really get a scary aspect from it either. But I can see at the time, Romero choosing a black and white
I think works in its benefit.
Filming, it works in its benefit because
not just based on him being, not being able to get, a color.
Yeah, I mean that was the color aspect was part of the budget. It was part of like being able to have an effective special effects thing. Sometimes blood looks better in black and white. It looks more goopy and it looks. You can use chocolate syrup and it still looks the same. It looks very goopy. That makes sense. But I think even more than that, him choosing a black and white perspective for the film allows him to play around with like lighting and shadowing more than even a color film allows.
I haven't seen the colorized version of this.
I have not either. And I really don't care to.
I don't.
Yeah, I don't have an interest because to me it's always really going to be in black and white. I mean, that was the choice, the decision that the director made.
It's not like Mad Max Fury Road where you can be like,
you can do both. And, well, in that sense, that's different because the black and white aspect of it is like trying to emulate films like this. And films from the 50s.
But at the same time, George Miller and Fury Road uses such vibrant colors.
It almost negates the purpose of that.
But I could see how it could work in black and white, too. I haven't seen...
Sure.
Because he did release it in black and white.
Sure.
And I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, it's like the Chrome edition.
Yeah, but I could see how, I get the merits behind it. But with this, I like with it being colorized, I would be like this,
I'm going to use a big word here, but the chiaroscuro in the film is, I think, really great in some aspects. Like when you think of
define that for people,
just the shadowing that's used in the contrast between the light and dark.
So you couldn't say shadowing; you had to say chiaroscuro.
I had to use it. No, but I would say like in terms when we were talking about Helen's sequence, where after she's been murdered by her daughter in the basement. And then Ben comes down to the basement and he sees her and she's kind of highlighted in light, but there's also that shadow obscuring parts of her. That's a pretty creepy scene, even now, in terms of like how it looks so.
I think the sound like effects and distortion they use too of her screams.
Yeah.
That still works really good too. It's not like scary, but it does come off as like creepy.
Yeah.
And I think that,
I think he does a good job utilizing the black and white aspects to his advantage by obscuring certain things and making it look almost intentionally unnatural. So like her highlighting in the light is unnatural. Like we wouldn't expect now to see somebody like highlighted like that in a basement. That seems obviously out of place. But in the film, that unnaturality is pretty intentional. I mean, this is an unnatural situation. And it's not like we are running around with zombies every day. It's an unnatural situation. I think it actually does work in this scenario to his advantage in terms of highlighting specific aspects of the film to make it scarier. And that's not just with Helen, but with Karen as the child. He doesn't even really have to do... Romero doesn't even have to do that much with special effects or makeup or anything to make Karen look like a unnatural zombie-like figure. It's more of a lighting thing that
lighting
happens.
and like camera angles.
And camera angles. And it works really well to the film's advantage. So you could say, like, now... I hate when people say, they can't watch an old film because it's in black and white, and that just takes them out of the film. We talked about it in House on Haunted Hill. That's just absolutely not true, because there are different aspects to a black and white film that add depth and layers to the horror of it that doesn't come out in color films. And it's just a different...
I can't, I didn't think I've mentioned it before, but I just think about it. It's like thinking about trying to watch Citizen Kane in color. Would ruin a lot of the shots in the film that Orson Welles was able to get out of it through the lighting and the camera angles and the shadows that were created from it.
Yeah.
So I think
there's just no you can't say that like because it's in black and white you can't derive horror from it, or you can't be scared by it, or because it's older it's not as good or it's not as scary.
I guarantee the effects in this film look a lot better than a lot of modern day films.
Yeah.
Because again, they had
to be creative with it.
It's like if you want this to be, shown on screen, you have to do it, and you have to figure out how to make it look real.
Mm-hmm.
So same thing. It just blows my mind thinking about like hate to use the example like Star Wars or any other film like that with all the miniatures that they had to use to create the explosions and the fight scenes with the X-wings and stuff that you see.
They had to get creative with it.
It looks great, and it looks awesome, and it's that's, and no one does that. Why? It's we didn't just have it CGI.
Unfortunately, it's probably cheaper to just have it CGI'd in. And there's a lot less creativity
and
to
it. As we both said, about it. And as we both said before, I'd rather take a practical effect that doesn't look great over a CGI effect. Because at least with the practical effect, even if it comes off as cheesy, it's tangible. You can,
right.
All your senses are able to interpret it as this is something that's actually happening. You can totally spot CGI from even really good CGI. Your eyes eventually can discern I'm not seeing something natural here.
Well, I would say Night of the Living Dead, it does have its cheesy moments in terms of how
the zombies
eating organs and things like that. At the same
literally
time,
fucking pork bones and shit that they're sitting there
chicken on us. Yeah, but I wouldn't have it any other way because
I say the crew bought a bucket of KFC, a couple buckets of the Colonel's finest that day. They had themselves some nice biscuits and coleslaw and taters and gravy and.
Someone had a liver.
And ate some chicken, and
At the same time, though, I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't have...
It's part of its charm.
Yeah, I wouldn't have
It's what they had. Again, I wouldn't want to... Imagine how stupid it would look if, we're eating CGI meat.
Yeah, exactly. It would look ridiculous. At least this looks... even though you can tell... If you're taken out of the context of the film, that's probably, chicken bone. That's probably just, some random meat that they found. At the same time, it's real.
And not only that, at the time,
it's pornographic.
Yeah, because it's you haven't seen anything. It's not that's considered brutal for the time. Again, nobody's wandered to think of Hostel yet. Or something.
I would say, watching this film and trying to put myself into a puritanical sense. That's a pretty brutal scene of them feasting on things, and if you can really immerse yourself in the film, which I think you can, Night of the Living Dead, if you're watching it seriously, you can immerse yourself in the film, and you kind of get caught up along with it, especially in terms of how much Romero works on character, then you can see how spooky that would be, and how disgusting seeing them eat all of those organs would be.
Not only that, even if you they're eating chicken or whatever, you don't want to see somebody fucking sitting there
throwing, It's almost like watching a guy like just deep throat a chicken bone to like suck off all the meat and marrow.
I'll do that in my privacy. If I'm eating wings alone, I'll sit there and like get every little bit of meat off the bone. And then
you need a wet nap too after.
And just totally enjoy and be very fucking bombastic about the whole process.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do that and
I don't want to see anybody feasting on cartilage on film.
If I'm eating wings with at a restaurant, say it was me, you, and a couple of friends, we went to a restaurant, got some wings. I try to get them as clean as possible because I hate wasting meat on chicken wings. But I wouldn't be sitting there making sure, okay, that's clean. I'd be like, okay, I ate enough to where I'm not gonna look. If I eat any more, I'll look like a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
So,
no, I agree.
So no, I in that sense,
I do think it's still disgusting.
Yeah, because in that sense, again, do you really want to see somebody sitting there fucking with a giant rib leg and fucking no, that's,
going to town on?
You're like that's hedonistic bot from Futurama. You're like, how delightful.
And I think even when both Ben and Barbara first see the corpse that's upstairs in the house. It's still a pretty frightening moment, even though now you can watch it and see well, that looks pretty fake. The body looks fake, but
thinking about it now, it's well, how come they become a zombie?
That is true.
Not only that, how come Helen became a zombie?
That is also true.
See,
Helen did become a zombie.
I don't ever.
Yes, she has this. Yes, she does. You only see a very quick glimpse of it because they don't show headshots in this film. So Ben. Right, exactly. So what happens is basically she wakes up really quick with the spade in her chest. She kind of just flutters open, and then Ben shoots her in the head really quick. And it's a very split second moment. So it's between her and Harry. They're very
a million times I've seen it.
Yeah, it's a part that you can actually easily miss because, like I said, all of the headshot moments of the film are off screen. I'm guessing particularly because that would be difficult to pull off.
A squib then?
Yeah, a squib like that. and actually, I will admit, the squibs in the chest areas
look good.
Pretty well done. And even good reactions from the extras that are on set. But I would definitely bet that Romero skipped out on headshots simply because that's a tough thing to pull off, especially in this film. Yeah, 68 with a low budget. So I think that's probably the reason why we don't see an actual headshot in either of those scenes where, he's shooting both Harry and Helen. They occur off screen. But I think in terms of the corpse upstairs, like I said, this is a film that you really, you can get into as an audience member viewing it as a realistic time capsule, really. And I think, if you can get into it like that, you will find those elements creepy. You will find it a bit disgusting. You'll even understand the shock aspect of how Barbara kind of recedes into herself throughout most of the film, even though it is annoying. I'm not going to say that Barbara is not an annoying character. She totally is.
No. I think
viewing it from now, I think feminist perspective would be that was a horrible portrayal of women in general.
But at the same time, it's understandable. You could put a man or a woman is gonna, if depending on how
their strength is emotionally,
is going to be,
she's already and I will admit that Romero does a good job. She's already a very emotionally frail person, even when you start the film, because
it's not Johnny's
she can't even handle being in a cemetery. You know.
I know, and it's funny. Again, the whole people probably. It's funny. We're an hour and a half into this, and people probably don't even get the opening of the intro. Is the fact that when she's telling her side of the story of what happened in the beginning of her and Johnny in the cemetery and what happened, some of the things she's saying just didn't fucking happen. So that's why you got Trump going, wrong. He's like, he was teasing me and I just laughed. Like, wrong. You weren't laughing. Like, stop it.
Yeah.
Stop it.
You were very upset.
You weren't going like, oh, and like when you're like, I tried to apologize to them. Wrong. No, you did not try to apologize to the man. You were trying to walk away, but your dumbass, when you were trying to walk away, decided to fucking brush shoulders against him and try, instead of like, I'm going to take the farthest route away from this creepy guy.
Yeah.
That's your own goddamn fault,
Yeah, I would say that, like, Barbra is not really... She's not a likable person, but she is you can understand her as a person. I think that if you can really get into that opening scene, which really everything in that opening scene happens quickly. You're kind of thrown into the whole scenario very fast. But if you can understand Barbra as a character from the beginning, in terms of probably being mocked and terrorized by Johnny as a kid and growing up, and then being an emotionally frail person even at her age now, it makes sense that she could go into shock and just be a totally useless person in a zombie apocalypse.
I totally agree. Again, she's not likable.
It doesn't mean you have to like her.
And she's catatonic and useless. But again, at the same time, like, if I was in that same situation, like, if I was like Ben, like, okay, we gotta do all this shit, and she's just sitting there, like, and she's like, comes across and slaps me, I'd probably punch her too. Like, that's it, bitch. I'm leaving you to die. Like, I would have no tolerance. If I wasn't the one, like her, catatonic, like, we're all gonna die. If I was more like Ben, like, we gotta do this shit. If I had someone on the team who's like, all right, you sit here and you die. We'll go do, whatever. I cannot be bothered to, deal with,
It's a great moment, too, because you think, maybe he's just going to slap her. That's a pretty common element in films of this nature.
Oh, and he cold cocks her.
But, yeah, no, he just goes right off.
And his punches are great, especially when he's punching Harry. It's literally like Romero's watching an episode of Star Trek with Bill Shatner.
Copying Shatner-esque elements.
One of Shatner's great fight scenes from the original Trek. And he's like, that's how I gotta have my man fight in this film. Throw these punches that are literally like downward angled, like, even though the guy's like same height as me, almost like downward angled, punches. And they just like, it's great. I love it.
I do too.
I absolutely love it.
All right, so out of 10 exploding Chevys, what would you give Night of the Living Dead?
9 out of 10.
Nice. I definitely thought you would go somewhere upper 8s to 9.
Yeah, 9 out of 10. It's a classic film.
It is.
I love it, despite its flaws. We didn't really talk as much as I'd like to about, like, how disconnected from the franchise this film is, like, with its rules with the zombies.
True. Yeah, I mean, we talked about it a little bit in the intro, but yeah, I mean, it definitely is disconnected from Dawn and Day.
At certain point, like, because people consider this the grandfather of zombie films. Like, this is what sets the rules up. And I would disagree with that. I think it's Dawn. Dawn's the film that really sets up what we know as Romero zombies.
Yeah, this one almost feels like an offshoot of Universal Monsters picture with Frankenstein, Afraid of Fire.
Because the zombies in this, it's again certain points they're like not just shambling, they're running. Like the whole chase sequence when Barbara's getting chased through the graveyard, the zombie's not shambling after her; he's running, and then being intuitive enough to pick up a rock and smash a window.
Yeah, this is almost like a precursor to Land.
Yeah, and you have, Karen, the daughter, when she turns into a zombie to attack her mom, she doesn't try to just eat her, she grabs a gardening trowel and stabs her with it. And I think that there's a total, in that sense, in this film, there's a total disconnect from how the zombies act in this to how Dawn later kind of establishes, and then kind of as the canon of the films continues on.
Yeah.
And I think to some people, if you're paying attention, and you've seen the other films, then yeah, you'll find that kind of jarring in how.
Yeah.
And again, I think not only that too. I think the fact that, like, the way they devour people, it's disconnected. But that's just more because of technical reasons. You can't, they can't do what they then within Dawn of the Dead of how they, people then, zombies devour people. They can't do that in '68, and then especially with the budget that they had in this film. So that's just more an acceptable technical limitation. But I think again, some of the elements of like how like in certain points in this film they're running, they're using certain objects to their advantage and showing some kind of intellect. That's totally disjointed from the rest of the films, and not saying it's a hindrance or anything, but I think again it's a noteworthy thing. It's something that the rest of the films don't have.
Right. Yeah, I would say I would probably give it an 8.5. It is a classic film. I think that part of it, in terms of why I give it an 8.5, is that some of its dialogue scenes run a little bit long, I think. This is actually a fairly long film for the time period, I would say. At almost an hour and 40 minutes long. And I think that probably just a little bit of that dialogue could have been excised.
Especially because compared to the rest of the film, especially when you get like dawn and especially day.
Yeah.
It's a lot more set in the 60s way of like people talking and...
Yeah. Yeah, I think that some of that dialogue could have been excised, even in terms of when we, our intro with Barbra talking and telling her story. It's a very long-winded version of that story that really is kind of unnecessary.
Just be like, we were in the graveyard and some man attacked us.
Yeah, it's almost in some parts just too long, and the actual dialogue part of it is just. It goes on for too long, and that's one of its biggest flaws. Other flaw that we talked about a little bit is the music, which sometimes feels a little off. It's because it's stock music. It's
not sometimes. It's in a lot of spots. It's again, I think the black and white tone and kind of how people look and talk, and the way the dialogue's framed, and then you pair that with the music. This movie almost feels like at times it fits much more in line with the 1950s, like in Twilight Zone. Like you could easily see this being like a more mature Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah.
Than like something that you'd see, especially in the late 60s.
Like
Easy Rider's about to come out. Like I think Easy Rider came out in 69, not 60. No, yeah, 69. So. A year later, you have like Easy Rider coming out, and they got all long hair doing drugs and sex and shit.
Sure, and then
this one you got characters like, oh golly gee willikers.
And even there even still like there were some horror movies releasing at this time period that were a little bit more,
especially the Italian.
Yeah, exactly. They were a little bit more risque than what this is. So yeah, I think that the actual soundtrack element of it is a little bit off. But other than that, it's a really enjoyable film.
One more thing I do want to bring up, not because I did just think about it. I'm kind of actually surprised we didn't bring it up. Is the ending?
Yeah, the actual surprise ending, wherein Ben is shot and killed.
The ending to this film is one of the best endings in cinema history, if you ask me.
Yeah, I would say that it's a very surprising moment, and Romero doesn't do anything to kind of foreshadow it or contemplate it before it actually happens. It just happens, and the audience is left to go with it. Just
what happens is because we see after the night's over, you have the local posse that we saw on the news is hitting the area with dogs and their guns, and they're just hunting and shooting this. And you got because again, all Romero films, especially in Dawn, when you get the whole giddy scene of like the rednecks just shooting the zombies for fun and sport while drinking beer. It's literally like that, except toned down more. They're not drinking beer and like woohoo, and it's more tame for the time. But they're on the hunt. They're a posse, and they're hunting the zombies down, burning their bodies, and they're going across the state doing that. And when they get to the farm that Ben Coe had been held up in, and Ben's the only survivor, after he wakes up and he comes out of the cellar, the posse's nearby, and Ben hears them outside, and he's wondering what's going on, and he goes to look out the window with his gun pointing to sea, and they see him, which they don't really give you a framing of the distance between them, so you can't really tell how far off they were. Which that's one thing that sucks, is you can't really tell how far off they were, but they are apparently able to spot Ben through this window, and the guy with the shotgun's able to pick him off and shoot him in the head. That's it. Ben's dead.
And that's pretty much it for the film.
And then, what's also great is, again, it's a great, shocking, and unsettling ending that our hero, through all this, and his wits, and yes, sometimes assholishness and stuff, but he was able to survive. And he was always trying to do what's right. It was just a casualty because he looked like he was one of them.
Yeah.
But what's even better, though, is the fact that the end credits is just this somber mix of still shots of the posse coming up, to the house.
Taking him out of it
with meat hooks to drag his body, to throw it into the fire with, the burning pyre of bodies that they have set up in the field, with them talking over, like, hey, we got another one. Yeah, grab the body and drag him over. And again, this is our hero. This is the one that, we've been rooting for essentially for the entire film. And he's this unnecessary casualty because, and you can't blame the posse.
They're just doing what they think they should
do.
do.
Because at the same time, it's like if you saw somebody probably poking their head out like around a window, and you're, at this point just looking for, to shoot, and you probably wouldn't too. You probably wouldn't ask, questions. If you shot him, you probably come up and be like, you wouldn't really have any reason to suspect when you got up there after he's dead, like, oh, he wasn't a zombie or anything.
Right.
So, I think that whole kind of gut punch, surprise, somber ending, and then the way they just, Romero has those end credits with those still shots. It's really great.
Yeah, I like that a lot, too. I think it's a depressing and sad ending to the film, and I think it works really well. It's probably one of the highlights of the film, actually. So,
yes, I think it's one of the best endings in all of cinema, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Just how, it's out of nowhere, but at the same time, it's not like, that's bullshit.
Yep.
It fits with the tone of the film.
That's right.
Would you? Because at the end of the day, when you watch this film, would you really want to see some kind of happy ending?
No.
Like he stumbles out of the.
There is no happy ending for it.
Like if he stumbles out, like, oh, thank God, he joins the posse. Like, we're gonna be a merry band of fucking zombie murderers.
Yeah,
now.
no, there's no happy ending for it, for sure. All right, so I hope you enjoyed our George Romero retrospective, a send-off for a great horror director. And we are really happy to bring you Night of the Living Dead and start at the beginning. And I'm sure that we'll be doing the rest of the movies at some point on the podcast. Maybe not this year, maybe next year. I don't know. But we'll get to them for sure. Because they're a big part of horror history, and we definitely want to give those a shout out and actually give them a proper episode. Next week, we're going to be doing Dread. We pushed it back a week because of this retrospective, but next week, rain or shine, we will be covering Dread.
No matter who dies.
That's right, no matter who dies. So we'll be covering Dread next week, so stay tuned for that episode. If you want to discuss Night of the Living Dead with us, please head over to our Facebook page. We also have a Facebook group, so find either of those, Blood and Black Rum Podcast. We're on Twitter at Blood and Black Rum. Give us a shout out on there. We have an email address. It's bloodandblackrumpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Patreon, patreon.com/bloodandblackrumpodcast. Give us a donation and help us fund the podcast. And then definitely check out our website, bloodandblackrumpodcast.wordpress.com. We post all of our episodes up there. And you can also help us out with any of our sponsors. Because we do have a Beer of the Month club. We have a wine club. There's a few things that we've got up there. So I do every episode. I post up those links. So click on them and order something, and you'll help save this podcast. We appreciate you for listening. We hope you join us next week for Dread. And thanks a lot for sticking around with the Blood and Black Rum Podcast for 76 episodes. So we'll see you next time.
Take care.